All right, so I'm back. I have finished working almost all of the leg. So what I did here, so that I don't have to continually count over and over again, I added a bulb stitch marker. They're removable stitch markers. They just open up. You can put them through a loop in your work. Each one of these is 10 rows. So I'm at 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and then I can just count the remaining. 51, 52, 53 is here on my needle. So I wanted to stop a couple rows before I start my heel, because I want to show you how I set up my needles with double pointed needles. Now if I was working magic loop, half of my stitches would already be on one needle, and I would just work the back half as my heel. But I have to, since my stitches are divided evenly on all three of my needles here, I don't already have half on the back on one needle. So I have 52 stitches here on my sock. So half of those will be my heel stitches, which is 26. Half of 26, 13. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 13 stitches on one needle, 13 stitches on another needle, and then I'll have 26 on the back. So I like to do that 2 rows ahead of time, just so I don't forget. I mean, you could really do it just right up to it, but that's just what I prefer. So I'm going to count 13 on my first needle. Right, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. There's 13. Now obviously I have like these, 3 random stitches here that I do need to work onto this needle, but oftentimes I'm not in a place where I have another needle, so I will just move these guys, slip them. I know it's hard to see because my needle is in the way, but so I just slipped them onto the next needle, and now I'm going to do another 13 stitches across. (11, 12, 13). So what I have here is I have 13 and 13, and then the remaining stitches here. I am going to just go ahead and move these guys over to my back needle. Totally okay, but I work 55 complete rows, and then now I need to get to my heel. So I'm going to work across the front. Okay, so when I have 4 stitches left on my front needles, I'm going to add in my contrast color. Remember when I switched from my contrast to my main color here? I'm going to use that same technique of picking up my floats for the heel. So I'm going to continue to work in my main color, the rose gold, but I'm going to pick up the gray as if I'm picking up a float, and I like to just hold this tight a little bit around my pinky finger over on this side. This is, again, I'm a continental style knitter, so I'm going to go underneath that gray and knit my color, and then knit the rose gold, go underneath the gray, and knit the rose gold. Okay, so what I did there is this helps me to get less of a gap there in the corner of my heel. I may keep that there. I may take it out when I weave in ends. Just depends on what I feel like. So I am done for the time being using my rose gold. Some people will go ahead and cut their yarn here and just put it off to the side. I don't mind it attached. I think it really gives a nice, easy connection to when you have to pick it back up again, and I'll show you how I do that. But I'm going to show you how to do the shadow wrap heel. That's what I like best for these vanilla socks. But I typically will use the Fish Lips Kiss heel, but that's a paid for pattern and I didn't want to infringe on any copyrights. So this one here is a free technique. It's more of a technique than a pattern. So I am now working with my contrast colored yarn, and I'm going to knit across all the way to my very last stitch here. All right, here we go. And I can kind of pull that a little taut just because it's already pretty secured there on the other side. Okay, so I've knit across the back side of my sock, or on my heel, the very first row of my heel. I have one stitch remaining here on my left-hand needle. I'm going to do a wrap and turn. The technique that I use for this is called a twin stitch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up the right leg of the stitch below. So the right leg of the stitch below, and place it right there on my needle. I'm going to knit in to this stitch here and take that right leg off. So I have my original stitch here still on my needle, on my left-hand needle, and the twin stitch to that stitch right here on my right-hand needle. I want to keep those two together, so I'm going to put that guy right back over onto my left-hand needle. Now the idea behind a wrap and turn is that you need to turn your work in the middle of a row, and you need to get your working yarn back on the right side. So if I didn't do this wrap and turn, my yarn would still be on this needle, and when I turn it, I would be starting here, or my yarn would still be attached right here. And that would create a gap here. So by doing a wrap and turn, you're adding a stitch right here, and then you have set up your yarn, your working yarn, to be in the right position to go back across that row. So I'm going to now purl back across all the way to the last stitch on my needle. Okay, I'm almost there here. I'm gonna go ahead just so you can see it. Get that other needle out of my way. Okay, so I now have one stitch on my left-hand needle here. I'm going to now do a purled twin stitch. So what I'm going to do here is, if you look, I want to pick up this. Let me get another needle here. But if I was on the knit side, I would be knitting right through this leg here. You guys see that? That's the equivalent on the knit side. So if I simply put my purl stitch onto my right hand needle, pick up this leg, which is equivalent to the right leg on the knit side, and I'm going to purl through this leg. There we go. Now my twin purl stitch is right here, and I'm going to put it back here on my left-hand needle. And then it's in position and I can go ahead and turn. Now I'm going to knit across What I love about the shadow wrap heel and a fish lips kiss heel is that you don't need markers, you don't need to count, you don't need to keep track of anything. It is very intuitive and very easy to keep track of where you are. So I'm just simply knitting across all the way. And I'm going to knit across until one stitch before my last twin stitch that I did. So you can see, it's very easy to see the difference. Here is my twin stitch right here. Here is one stitch before. I'm going to do the exact same technique, making another twin stitch with this stitch one stitch before. So pick up the right leg of the stitch below, place it on my needle, and now I'm going to knit into that bottom leg and add that new stitch right next to the old stitch, creating a twin stitch there and placing my working yarn in the correct position to get ready to purl across this side. So now I'm going to purl all the way across to one stitch before my last twin stitch. So I've knit to one stitch before my last twin stitch. Here's my last twin stitch, and here's one stitch before. With your yarn in front, you're going to slip that stitch over to your right hand needle purlwise, pick up that purl bump with your left hand needle, and purl into there. So now here's my twin stitch. I'm just going to place it right back here on my left hand needle, putting my yarn in place to begin knitting on my next row. I'll do one more of each, and then I'll come back and show you how to work the second half of your heel. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to continue this pattern until I have 6 unworked stitches in between both sides of my twin stitches, and I'll show you more what that means here in a second. 6 stitches for these sport weight socks is just my magic number. I feel like it gives me enough rows to work to make sure that I have enough depth in my heel, and since I do have fewer stitches on my socks. So, okay, so here I've worked all the way up to the last twin stitch, one stitch before my last twin stitch. So I have a twin stitch, and an unworked single stitch. So again, I'm going to lift up the right leg of the stitch below, place it on my needle, and knit right in to that stitch and allow that twin to be together with its other twin there. Turn your work. Your yarn is now in position to purl across the back row. So here I am, twin, twin, single unworked purl. So yarn in front, going to slip purlwise onto my right hand needle. I'll pick up that leg, that purl bump there, and purl. Now here's my twin stitch. I'm going to slip that right back over to my left hand needle and turn. Okay, let me show you here. So if you look at this all together as one, I have 3 purl stitches, or 3 twin stitches on the left, unworked stitches here in the middle, and 3 twin stitches on the right. Once you finish a purl row, you should always have the same amount of twin stitches on both sides of your unworked stitches. like this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work back and forth until I only have 6 stitches remaining here in the middle. And I'll meet you back here after I've worked those stitches. All right, I've worked the first half of my heel. So when you're doing a wrap and turn heel, you work 1/2 by decreasing your stitch count, your stitches. You're not really decreasing your stitches necessarily, but you're decreasing the ones that you're actually working. So we are down to 6 stitches here in the middle. I have 10 twin stitches on this side, 10 twin stitches on this side here, and then 6 unworked stitches here in the middle. When I say unworked, I mean I have not wrapped and turned them. So we've made the first half of our heel. To work the second half of our heel, we're now going to start knitting these twin stitches together as one. So we'll knit one and then we'll make a triple stitch to do our wrap and turn. So just as we were working less and less and less stitches each row, we're now doing the opposite. We're going to be working more and more and more and more stitches until we get all the way back to the beginning. So let me show you what that looks like. So my yarn, I finished my last twin stitch right here on the purl side. So here I'm going to work across those 6 stitches that have not been turned into a twin stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've come to my first twin stitch. That's what's so beautiful about this heel, is that there is no, like, I really didn't have to count those. I just counted to show you. But your stitches show you where you are at. So with this twin stitch, this first one here, I'm just going to knit it as 1 stitch. Each twin stitch is always considered 1 stitch. Same with the triple stitches. So I'm going to knit that, which means that I'm both of these legs here, I'm just knitting them together. And that one is done. Then I need to do another wrap and turn to go back and pick up on the purl side that first twin stitch, because we do one, if we do something on one side, we have to do it on the other side. So to do our wrap and turn, we're going to do it straight into this double stitch here. And that then will turn into a triple stitch. And we do that exactly how we did the twin stitches. It'll just have 3 legs instead. So we're going to pick up our our right leg of the stitch below, which is very prominent now. So we're going to put that up onto our left hand needle and knit into that leg. I hold these stitches back just to make sure that they don't fall off. And just as before, I will slip this triple stitch back on. So now look at this stitch very closely. We have 3 legs in here, 3 stitches in that 1 stitch, making it now a triple stitch. And we're going to turn our work, and we are all ready to work back, purling all the way to the other side. So I'm just going to work these stitches here. Again, I don't need to count, I'm just reading my work. Here's my first twin stitch. I'm going to purl that. Remember, both those strands, I'm purling them together. And then I need to make this guy here into a triple stitch to do a wrap and turn. Again, with your yarn in the front, slip both of those stitches over to your right hand needle. Lift up that purl bump, purl into it. I now have three stitches in this 1 stitch, and I'm just going to move it back onto my left hand needle, making sure that they didn't get twisted, that they are all facing the correct way. Now I'm ready to turn. So now you can see I should have 8 stitches here in the middle that are just single stitches, 8 single stitches in the middle there. When I get done this next time, I'll have 10 and then 12, so on until all of my twin and triple stitches have been worked. So I didn't have to count because I can see here I have my triple stitch right there. I'm going to go in all 3 of those strands, all 3 stitches there, and just knit them all together as one. There we go. Time to make another triple stitch. Lift up that leg, insert your left hand needle, knit, slide your knit stitch back over to the left. My yarn is all set up. I'll purl back. Does anybody else find that their purl stitches are looser than their knit stitches? Sometimes mine are, and it's quite noticeable, and then sometimes I'm completely the same knit and purl. It's really strange. I'm not quite sure what makes the difference, but all right, so I've come to my triple stitch here. I'm going to purl that, all 3 strands together, just purl it. There we go, and then I need to wrap and turn, so I'm going to make this, turn this twin stitch into a triple stitch. Slide it to my right hand needle, pick up that purl bump, purl, slide it back over to my left hand needle. You just want to really make sure that you're getting all 3 strands and that you're not splitting the strands. So you can already see here how the heel is shaping to be the second half of the heel. If you look at this heel here, so I've worked all the way through to here, and now I'm coming back, making this turn and picking up those stitches on each side, working more and more stitches now every row. So I'm going to go ahead and continue to work through all of these twin and triple stitches, and I'll be right back when I get to the end, because I just want to work those end stitches with you and show you how to transition back to your main color yarn. All right, so I'm getting ready to work the last row, or the last couple rows of my heel, and I guess when I first started, I would just kind of question if I was supposed to do the same thing on that last row or not. So I just wanted to walk you guys through it. So I'm going to, well, I've already started knitting, but as you can see here, I have a twin stitch and a triple stitch here. So as I approach these stitches, I will work my twin stitch as one, and then I'll make my last twin stitch right here. And then I'll purl back and do the same thing. So here's my twin stitch. I'm gonna just work that as one stitch. Make sure to pick up, whoops, all 3 of those strands. There we go. And then I'm going to make my last twin stitch right here. And there we go. So my yarn is in position now to go ahead and purl back. All right, I'm approaching this last triple and twin stitch. I'm just moving my needle out of the way so that it's a little easier for you to see. So here I go. I'm just going to work that triple stitch and then make one more triple stitch here. Remember, bring your yarn in the front, slip that twin stitch over to your right hand needle, lift up that leg, the left little purl bump there, purl. Now oftentimes for a minute there I will forget to move this guy back over, but just like we did with all of our other triple stitches and twin stitches, you have to move that stitch back over to your left hand needle. If you don't, there will be a hole, a gap there. So I have my twin stitch here, all my single stitches in the middle, and my last twin stitch here. So I'm actually working, because I am working in a contrast color, I will be working right now the very last row of the gray yarn. I'm going to work this twin stitch, and then I'll show you what I do from there to get back to my main rose gold color. So this is where definitely you can give an extra little tug here because you're working these corners, and that will definitely help to close up any holes, any gaps that there might be. Getting to the end, I can feel it in my fingers, so I'm just kind of paying attention here with my fingers, with my eyes. All right, so here is my last triple stitch. I'm just going to work that like we've done all the other ones. There we go. Now, here's where there's a little difference between your contrast color and if I was just sticking with one color throughout the entire sock. If I had done my heel in the rose gold, I would continue knitting. So I don't have another stitch on my needle to go back. If I were just to turn it around and start working again, I would have a gap there. So I can't do that. So if this was my rose gold color, I would just start knitting right here and go around and then work my last triple stitch here. So my working yarn is on this side. My contrast color is on this side. I'm done with my contrast color. I'm going to go ahead and cut that off. So now I'm working with my rose gold again. When you're working with double pointed needles, this is a very, very easy solution. I need to start working here again. Well, because I have double pointed needles, I can just simply slide my stitches to the other side and start working. If I was using magic loop or 9-inch circulars, then I would slip all of these stitches back onto that needle so that I was ready to work it again, if that makes sense. But with double points, I can just slide that needle right over and start working it. So I'm gonna knit. Let me get in through all of those legs there. Knit these 3 together just like we did all of the other twin stitches. I'm giving a little extra tug here to close up any gaps that there might be. And then I'm just knitting across. My heel is done at this point. I am onto the leg of my sock. Okay, now keep in mind that I dropped, oh yikes, I have a floater stitch here that I almost missed. That happens, just pick it up. Okay, so see, I have this big gap here, but that will tighten up as I pull on my contrast color yarn. So now I'm going to catch my float again, just like I did on all the other times that I switched back and forth, just to secure this guy in and close up any gaps. On this next round, I am also going to reposition how many stitches are on each needle. Again, I'll have 16, 20, and 16, just to make things a little bit more even. That's just how I like to do it, but you could leave them as is. So. Again, just go underneath. And then I will even just give this a little tug, close up any holes, and now I'm not going to pick that guy up again. Okay, I'm back at my beginning of round, and now it's even easier to tell where your beginning of round is, because I have the heel here, so when I come, when I'm done working my heel, then I know I'm at the beginning of the round, and it's a nice visual. So I can, again, there is a little bit of a gap there, but when I pull on this guy here, I'm holding it here just so I don't pull too much of the stitches, but as I pull on this, just a smidge, it'll tighten it right back up. So I'm just going to continue working. I am now officially on my foot of my sock. I'm going to work that for typically for a size 7, 7.5, I do about 50 to 55 stitches before I start my toe, or I'm sorry, 50 to 55 rows before I start my toe. So I'm just going to continue working stockinette in the round until I have reached the desired length for my foot. I typically go to about the crease of my pinky toe is about where I go, but everybody's toes are shaped differently. So as you knit more and more socks, you will learn what works best for your foot or for the foot of the people that you're making the socks for. Like I know my husband is a little bit different, and my son's toes are not as long as my toes, so I have to start them at different places. And I just keep a little sock ruler, and I put a mark for a name where everybody's foot is, and then I will put a second mark for where to start their toe. So that's just how I like to do it because I knit a lot of socks. I probably wouldn't do that if I was only knitting socks very occasionally, but I do knit a lot of socks. So, all right, so I'm just going to keep going, and I'll meet you back here for the toe.